Welcome to the Clear to Send podcast, a podcast about wireless engineering, where we educate you on Wi-Fi technology, talk about design tips, troubleshooting, interviews, and the tools. Here are your hosts, Roel and Francois.
Hi everyone, welcome on the Clear to Send podcast. This week I'm here with Roel. Hi Roel, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Francois?
I'm very good actually. I'm feeling really good today. And on this episode, this week you attended a little event by Cisco called DevNet Create in Mountain View, right?
Yeah, so this was hosted on my side of the world, Mountain View, California, and the venue was called the Computer History Museum, and it's very close to the Google campus.
Oh, sounds good. And so you had a good time discovering a little bit more, like, you know, how we could apply programming to the network, the whole network environment. So we'll talk about that in a bit. Right before, we have two pieces of news for this week, actually three pieces of news. The first one is a Foxconn interconnect technology, or FIC, and Belkin International announced transaction to create a global consumer electronic leader. So Foxconn agrees to buy Belkin for $866 million in cash in order to create like a global consumer electronic leader. And so they'll be competing against, Ares, which is the other big player on the market for the consumer Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. And Belkin has, owns the Belkin brand, Linksys, Wemo, and Fine's brand as well. So we'll see how that plays along. That's more on the consumer side of things. If you want to learn more, we put the link to the public announcement from Foxconn in the description.
Cool.
The second piece of news is related to public Wi-Fi in New York City. So they're thinking of deploying Wi-Fi throughout the city using their street light. So pretty much replacing the street. Right now in a lot of cities, they're replacing the street lights for LED lights. It's more like power efficient, and plus it doesn't produce as much light pollution. And so they're thinking of using those street lights to put an access point into it and provide Wi-Fi, a more affordable public Wi-Fi access to the population.
Do you think they're going to build it into the light post so it just looks like a regular light post, or you think they're going to add NEMA enclosures on the outside and you could see the access points? Because I wonder if it's also an aesthetic thing.
I think they have the technology nowadays. Like if you look at Ventave antennas, they have the technology to just pretty much seamlessly integrate the AP antenna with the light, so you don't even know the antenna is there. So I don't know.
That's true.
Yeah, right now it's just like it's just been an announcement from the mayor. So it's still like at the political level. But if you're talking about the technical feasibility of the project, it's actually doable with antenna, Ventave antennas, or just custom antennas that you will just embed into the light post.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, hopefully that actually pans out and we can see how they've done it, how that works with even neighboring networks, like inside of people's homes. Is that going to interfere with their networks and vice versa? Because I'm sure if it's public Wi-Fi, people are going to be joining it. Maybe they might be switching on and off between their network versus the AP and the street light that's right outside their house.
Yeah, and when you think about New York City, it's not really the place where Wi-Fi is. The Wi-Fi environment is quiet. They already have a lot of Wi-Fi networks around, so I don't know how it's gonna play around. So Klaus Hitting on his Wi-Fi Now website has an article about it where he discussed the technical feasibility of it and also the political challenges, I would call them, to make the project happen.
Awesome.
And finally, for this week, we welcome the new CWNEs to the CWNE Club. So we have 4 new CWNEs this week. CWNE number 269, Bernhard de Montmorency from Australia. So congrats, Bernhard.
Congratulations.
We have CWNE number 270 from Mexico, Carla Cisneros Galvan. So congrats, Carla. And then we have CWNE 271 from Sweden, Eric Gunnarsson. Congrats, Eric. And then finally we have CWNE number 272, Albert Colas from USA. So congrats to all of you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, congratulations, everyone. We're almost there to 300. So
almost there, yeah.
We're getting a lot more CWNEs. That's very good to see.
Yeah, it's really good to see. And that's more people to provide information and feedbacks to the community and share the knowledge and stuff. So that's really good. All right, Roel, let's talk about DevNet Create. So how was the event?
Sure. Oh, I thought it went really well. It was interesting to hang around a lot of developers because I usually do not hang out with developers, and there was a lot of different tech talks and workshops. They had some pretty good keynotes, so there's a lot going on. It's a 2-day event, but what they really did was take some of the sessions from day 1, and then they also put those same sessions in day 2, but mixed around the times. Excuse me. So you can actually attend some sessions that you were unable to attend on the first day.
That's pretty cool. Okay. So was it
one of the reasons why I wanted to attend this this conference, I guess, is for one, they were offering it to Cisco champions. And so I said, hey, I'm local and might as well attend. I think it was a $200 ticket to attend here. It wasn't just local people. There were also people who flew in from around the country, even from different countries. I remember somebody from Nigeria had spent their own money to come out to DevNet Create. And they were part of a specific challenge of creating something there during the 2 days. But my goal of attending DevNet Create was really to get an understanding of what do we need to do as network engineers to see what's coming up next, right? With automation. We had this episode with Jake Snyder where he talked about using Python, and that's exactly why I wanted to go to DevNet Create, was kind of take that episode from Jake Snyder. I think that's episode 114. I wanted to take it to the next level and see what other people were doing with the network and what were they trying to automate, what were they creating, what apps, basically what was possible.
So how did you prepare for the event? Did you just go, or did you have to download any tools prior to the event to do any programming? Did you read any things online, or did you just go and then went with the groove?
I just went. I didn't prepare myself for this. I just said, I'm just gonna check it out, and I ended up joining some workshops, and these were hands-on things. And I didn't realize if I had looked at the agenda before I attended, I would have seen that you had to set up your laptop before attending these workshops. But luckily, some of these workshops were really easy to get started in. And so I was able to catch up. And basically some of the first session that I joined was the Net DevOps Engineer Everyday Skills. And they had someone teach us how to use like iOS XE and use APIs that were in that Cisco iOS operating system.
Yeah.
And then tie that into with something called Cisco Spark. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Cisco Spark. It's like a chat application. I would say it's similar to Slack. Yeah. And what we were doing was tying in even like notifications that, let's say there's some sort of alert that happened on your router. One of the examples could be maybe their BGP neighbors down, for example. And what you could do is you can set like a time, say, okay, if a BGP neighbor goes down after 10 seconds, then send an alert to Cisco Spark in a specific channel. That was one of the examples. And then a second example was, all right, we have a network engineer that's going to make a change on this device. They make the change, and then when they try to save that change, it actually sends an alert to Cisco Spark with the approvers on, like an approvers channel, however you want to call it. And then the approver has to approve that change. They'll see the change, they have to approve it, and then it gets applied to the device. So I was looking at that, and that's a iOS XE example for a router or a switch. And I was seeing, hey, maybe that's even possible with wireless, right?
Yeah.
So that's things like that. That was the first workshop that I started in, and that one was actually very different for me because it was kind of you're getting started really quick and you just go. And that was the first workshop after the keynote.
So all these different use cases you saw, did it give you any ideas to implement some new things on your own network, or did you start to brainstorm new ideas?
Yeah, I started brainstorming some ideas because I get a lot of email alerts, and I was thinking, okay, how do I get rid of email alerts? Because it's email alerts, as you know, and everyone else knows, that's how we usually get our alerts, and it just kind of clutters our inbox, right? Yeah. So we're unable to actually see the messages that we are supposed to see from people, but instead we are inundated with alerts of whatever kind. It could be informational alerts or critical alerts. Yeah. And now that we use things like Slack and Spark, maybe that's where the alerts should go. And so that was the first thing that I thought of was, let's migrate alerts off to a different platform and make that actionable, because you can make it actionable through something like Cisco Spark and trigger an event to be pushed out to a router or a switch, for example.
And seeing everything you can do with Cisco iOS XE, where do you think they're gonna take the wireless the wireless piece of it in the future? Do you think they're gonna migrate the Arrowhead iOS controller somewhere else, or do you think they're gonna try to integrate that into their total SDN solution?
The way I was seeing it at this conference was there's a big push for the Meraki side. I didn't see too many sessions on Cisco AeroNet. There was one that had to do with hands-on Cisco location SDK for iOS, and that tied in mainly with CMX. But what I did is, because I didn't see any AeroNet stuff, I actually attended mostly the Meraki stuff. So it was the full stack of Meraki. It wasn't just the wireless, but there were some wireless pieces. And so one of the other sessions that I joined was the Automate Your Network with Python and Meraki. And they give an introduction of using an application called Postman, where you tie in your API to Postman, and you're able to query and even send data to your Meraki dashboard, your whatever networks you have available. And I thought that was really interesting because you can do things like, let's say you're doing some sort of network audit. You could actually use APIs to gather all that data for you and put it in a CSV file and maybe even organize it just based on whatever you're looking for. They did things like that. So let's say I want to see all my Meraki APs, how many of which model. I want to organize per model. Are they all licensed? And when does the license expire? That kind of thing. So I thought that was really neat. And just getting started on day one was enough to get me thinking about, okay, what else can I do? Yeah. Right. So maybe I can alert to Slack when an AP has high channel utilization over, 50% over a given time. That's something I was thinking about. And maybe even say, okay, which band is it affecting and how many clients are affected? Or maybe alert me if X number of clients are affected. Because if there's no clients on that band, I don't really care, right? But there's things like that. Or let's say you want to make a change to your transmit power settings, right? So in Meraki, you have to go in and either find out where that setting is and either change it per AP or do a global change. Like let's say the network is 80 megahertz by default, all the APs, and you've got like 100 APs. You could create a script that would do a bulk change and modify all of those at the same time.
That's useful. Saves you some time.
Yeah, so I think that's where they're trying to show you the value of doing this, because you could even monitor events. They tied it into what is that logging Splunk, and they were showing how there was one site, I don't remember if it was retail or not. Actually, it was around their headquarters. So in their near their headquarters, they have a huge food truck section. And they worked with these guys and said, hey, we'll give you some access points and provide Wi-Fi for the area. And then what they did was tie that into Splunk, and they're able to see things. They were creating a custom dashboard that showed specific information. So using the APIs and with Python, they're able to say, all right, we saw 40,000 unique devices on this day. This is how many unique devices we saw on each and every weekday. And then from that point, how many of those devices were like what kind of devices? Were they iOS? Were they Motorola? Were they Samsung? They were able to get that kind of data using Python and the APIs that they have.
So yeah, I think what's powerful about it, it allows you to scale, and especially with Meraki, where Meraki is very useful when you have a lot of sites with a small amount of APs per site, and the ability to scale in these type of scenarios is very important.
Yeah, and I would agree, because there's a lot of scenarios where there's not that many IT people available for these kind of things, right? Maybe you work in an environment where there's a lot of different sites coming up. And one of the examples that they had given, there's a couple of examples. They have this field technician app that is used by people who are that need to deploy a network, but aren't really the technical guys, right? So you could send all your Meraki hardware to your site, and let's say it's a bunch of APs, and the field technician there sees these boxes, and what he could do is you have this field technician app which you program that ties into the Meraki dashboard, and then all that technician has to do is plug in the serial numbers and then select what network it is, what kind of device, and then puts that through the form. And from there, it actually will provision all those devices onto your dashboard into the right network using the correct template, so it'll have the right settings. Yeah. And then from there, the technician just needs to mount them and connect them, and that's all he has to do.
You could even go further and check the GPS location of the technician phone and make sure and auto search like the list of
location.
like auto search the list of location you have in your dashboard with the same GPS coordinate, and then propose it to the technician and saying, "Are you here?" And then the technician say, "Yes, I'm here." Yeah. And then add the APs or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those are the kind of things that you're supposed to think about, and some people might be thinking, well, how do I even create something like that? Yeah, you can get it as easy as using even a Google form. They were showing that they were able to create this with a Google form to provision different parts of the network. And I thought that was really interesting, right? Because you might not have the skills to build a front end like website, but why not just use some of the tools that are already available to us, such as Google Forms? And that was really easy to do.
Yeah, and then if it's online, everyone can access it from any platform, like a phone, iOS phone, Android, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can tie that into credentials and whatnot. And one of the, because you talked about GPS, one of the things that they also talked about at DevNet Create was the location demo. And so at the event, they had this third party company, Mapwise IO, I think is what they were called. And what happened is Cisco Meraki had already planted some Meraki APs across the conference area. And what this company did was they had a map of where the APs were. What they did was just make the map look prettier, to put up on a web page. And using their tool and the APIs, what they did was overlay the map onto like an actual Google map, for example. And then you've got this show floor. And you've got the GPS coordinates or the coordinates of like where things are, right, within where the building is on a map. And then, excuse me, I'm like losing my voice here. And then they were able to put in like areas of the show floor. So here's a booth here on this side of the floor. Here's another, here's the auditorium, for example. And then you, with your APIs, you import that map into the Meraki dashboard, and it's going to know where the APs are on the floor. I forgot how he did that part, but in the end, within 45 minutes, he has this location like wayfinding app, and you're able to see like where devices are on that map and where they are on the show floor. And so once you join the network, like their wireless network there, and you use the app, this Mapwise map, you're able to say, okay, I want to get to the auditorium from where I am at right now. How do I get there?
Okay.
And it'll do like, instead of the blue dot navigation, it actually it makes a line and it tells you how to get there. And I thought that was pretty cool because the accuracy of that thing was not that far off. And Meraki didn't have a ton of APs. I didn't even know where they were because the Computer History Museum, their Wi-Fi is Cisco AeroNet.
Okay.
And they had 3502s all over the place.
Okay.
But one of the things I did ask was, hey, you're because he didn't say he was using Meraki APs other than you see it on the dashboard. And I said, there's a bunch of Cisco APs here. How are you tying this into your mapping software? And he said that Meraki had planted APs all around the floor. I don't know where they put them, but
okay.
I was just kind of curious how he was doing that because I thought maybe he was tying the AeroNet APs into it somehow. But it would have been cool to see the AeroNet APs in there. But there is no, as far as I know, there's no API that's on the Cisco controller. So that's why we probably don't see any of that.
And so with the APIs, the Meraki API, developers can actually create their own app that they would tie to the Meraki, dashboard and get information out of it, right? And you can actually search the apps and try to. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, they have some solutions available for people to use. I mean, they have a GitHub page, and different various people had their own GitHub pages with their own custom built solution. And the ones that I described were just the easy ones. I did do one where we used this thing called Node Red. It's the first time I've ever used it. It was more like a GUI, like drag and drop thing. And the way we used it was to get inventory and then build a front end web page that displays everything nicely. And I thought that was really cool because you didn't really need much coding to get that information. You just needed to know the hooks in the API to get
the information.
Get information off of the what devices you're looking for. Because you can query just about anything. You can query all the APs that you have and which network it's on and which site, and then drill down even further to see what devices are on your network. That kind of thing. You can get so much out of the Meraki API that you can probably come up with anything that comes to your mind. I mean, I was starting to create a list of the ideas I had, like even asset tracking you could do with the Meraki dashboard, right? So if you tie in a floor plan and you know which devices are Wi-Fi capable, you know their MAC addresses, you can now create an asset tracking software and overlay that on a map. And let's say you just want to provide this to, it might not be someone who needs access to the dashboard, right? They don't need to log into the Meraki dashboard to see all this. Just give them a front-end web page that has the map and the location of where their assets are.
That's pretty cool. And then also when we talk about APIs, usually like, as an introduction to APIs, we say that we can get information out of, for example, the Meraki dashboard, but we can also use the API to make changes, right? And automate some tasks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. So you can definitely make, so when you're looking at this, I guess from the developer's point of view, these are GET requests. GET requests just get information out of the Meraki dashboard. And then when you want to make a change, that's called a put or a push, or I think it's called put, because you're putting new information there. And it can be quite dangerous because the way, so let me tell you how you actually get started in this. By default, these APIs are not enabled in your dashboard. You actually got to go into your organization and then say allow API access into the organization. And then from there, with your user profile, whoever is going to access the APIs on the dashboard, you have to create API keys for your user account. And you have to keep those keys because they don't, once you've created a key and it shows it to you, it's not going to show it to you again. So you have to keep that safe somewhere. And then from there, you can, with that API key, you can start either getting information or putting information onto your dashboard. So changing access points, changing firewall rules as an example. Like let's say you want to, you need to change a layer 7. You need to add a layer 7 rule to your access points, right?
Yeah.
Like an application rule. You have thousands of access points. You're not going to go into the dashboard and try to create it for each site, right? Each network. What you could do is just push that with the API and say, here's this rule I want applied to every single access point in my organization on all across all these different networks. You can just script that and easily do it. It wouldn't take as long with the whole point and click on the dashboard.
How would you test that to make sure it works?
Well, that's interesting because that's probably getting a little bit beyond what I know.
Yeah, probably.
But I would definitely use a lab, and Meraki has this, what they call this sandbox, where you can use their environment to get started and test things. But yeah, that's a good question. Those are some things you want to have a test environment for, because you don't want to push the wrong thing to your whole network.
Yeah.
And B, you got to make sure the guys who are doing this actually know what they're doing, right? And so they've coined, I don't know if they've coined this term, but this is a new term to me. They were calling these people net DevOps. So we've heard of DevOps. Now we're hearing net DevOps.
And are we going to have SuperNet DevOps soon? Or wireless WNet DevOps?
And all these different terms for people coming out of all sorts of places. But to me, it just means a network engineer who understands DevOps. I don't know. He can program.
Or maybe a developer that understands networks.
That's true. Hopefully there are a lot of developers that really understand networks. And we get people who don't really understand Wi-Fi. So that's the scary part.
So yeah, I think the little experience I have with programming is, it's a lot of try and errors. And so you try something, and then it either doesn't work, so you have to debug. And then when it works, finally works, is it doing what I wanted to do? Mm-hmm. And then you have to go back and fix and try and errors. And so if you do that on a production network, it's not going to end well, right? So I'm guessing, if you're interested in doing some of automation work, I'm guessing you need a lab or some sort of environment that you can run your scripts against.
Yeah, it's got to be treated like any other network, right? You have a network, and before you push changes to it, you actually test that with maybe one switch in your lab, that kind of thing. So, I mean, it's like any other scenario for all of us. Whenever we're testing something, we don't always test with production. I mean, some people don't have a test environment, so their test environment is production. But just always make sure you know what you're doing or what you've done.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's not as easy to apprehend, for us as network engineer, right? When you do a network change, you know that when you do a shutdown, you know that your interface is going to go down. But if you write a piece of code and then you're calling an API and then you're just, hooking the hooks, like you said, you don't really know exactly what's happening in the background. So it can be harder for us to apprehend. Also, when you do a loop, you don't know how, if you don't do the loop properly, it might just loop forever. And you're like, so you have to plan those type of things and make sure you know what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe that's something that they need to consider teaching people, especially new people that are getting into this, such as myself, is I don't want to accidentally break something. So what is the best way to test out this code? And for me, coming out of this event, it was more like test it out with their sandbox.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, they give you access to their sandbox, which you can actually see. And I guess I'll start sharing out these resources here, and we'll have links in the show notes. But you can go to Meraki.io, and from that page, you'll see like a learn section where there's a getting started and tutorials. And when you go to that to any of those two sections, let's see, the getting started section, or actually go to tutorials, and the two tutorials that we used at this conference was getting started with Postman, which is a GUI tool for working with these APIs and specifically REST APIs. And then there's another tutorial called Automation with Python API Lab. And those two tutorials utilize the Meraki sandbox in order to get started. And so that's how you'll actually start testing with accessing APIs and such. And you can see their sandbox, and you can even put new things on their sandbox.
So the sandbox is pretty much like a virtual environment that you can use to test or learn.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's virtual. I don't know if it's actual hardware. That's actually a good question, but it looks like an actual Meraki environment. It looks like you'll see site organizations, You'll see networks, you'll see firewalls, switches, and also the APs. You can see the devices that are connected. I don't know how they're doing that. I'm assuming it's a real environment somehow. With maybe the clients might not be real. They might be lab devices, but it still operates the same as because I already have access to my own dashboard, so it feels the same.
So if you
I just haven't done drastic changes.
If you want to try it out and get started, do you need to install additional tools on your computer? It's just a web-based application.
You'll definitely need Postman. That's Postman. There's a web client. There's a client for Mac and a client for Windows. I definitely recommend downloading it and installing it, because that's what you're going to use to interact with APIs. You definitely need Python installed on your computer. And at this event, they were recommending Python 3.
Okay.
And then head over to Meraki.io to start seeing those tutorials. And if you even want to see some of these challenges that we were doing, there is DevNet create.io, and along the top there's a learn and code section. On that drop down, you'll see the Meraki challenge. Now at this event, if you did do the Meraki challenge, they gave you a kit, which was just a switch with a 3-year license, but you could still register for this challenge and then try out the 3 challenges that they have just to get started. And I think that's a great way to see things and also look at the tutorials on Meraki.io. You can even explore some of the demos and the different apps that were created using APIs just to get an idea of what's possible.
Yeah.
And what I want to see is more Wi-Fi specific things. I mean, they got things for, provisioning Wi-Fi, the equipment. They've got a custom splash page you could create. So I'll probably try that in my lab here at home. There's a location demo. I'd like to see more wireless stuff. You'll see automation, network alerting, even analytics. So it's interesting. I do want to say, like, separate from that, the one thing that was kind of Wi-Fi related is they had this booth where you would hack the network. So they call it the Black Hat, White Hat Challenge. The one thing is I didn't see anything white hat related, but they did have the black hat part, which they had a computer set up with Backtrack, and they had this vulnerable access point. So it's a specific access point that had a vulnerability on it. And what you would do is use Backtrack to hack the wireless network, which was using a WPA2 pre-shared key. And so if you've used Backtrack, they have all these exploits already installed for you, or the Cisco guys already downloaded some. And there's one specific there to crack the key, and you just run it. And I mean, you don't even see what it's doing, but it eventually outputs this information saying, here's the pre-shared key for that wireless network. And then, so there's different sections of this hacking challenge. So your desk area is lit with everything's lit with red LEDs, all the things you have to hack. And so when you pass one section, the LED turns green.
Very cool.
So the wireless router had red LEDs, and the moment I ran the exploit, got the SSID, and then joined that SSID, the LEDs went from red to green to show that I had cracked it. So that was kind of interesting. And then from there, you like crack this vulnerable network camera, and in the end, you open up a safe which has a free hat in there.
Oh, nice. So with API, like you could tie the network infrastructure to like an Alexa or home automation stuff too, right?
Yeah, I don't think that one was so much API, but more about automating some of the hacks, or like a specific process, right? So you run an exploit, which is probably written in some sort of like one programming language. It could be Python, and it does a sequence of events to try to come to this outcome, which was the pre-shared key password. So that was my experience with DevNet Create. I thought it was very insightful and inspired me. I even went out and already bought the Learn Python the Hard Way book, and I'm already on, I think, exercise 6 or 7.
That's cool.
And I just got it yesterday.
Like it?
Yeah, I like it so far. And like your recommendation from our episode with Jake Snyder, which was Pythonista, and I was using that, the Pythonista app to test out my exercises, write them out. And it's neat because you could actually save that either on iCloud or on like your Google Drive or something, and still have access to it when you get to a computer. So
yeah, and I also tie
it's a convenient way.
You can tie it to another application called Working Copies, and so you can do upload your files onto your GitHub repository.
Oh wow! So I haven't even gotten that far. I was just wanting to do those exercises on my iPad because I didn't feel like busting out my laptop.
Yeah, I like the iPad too because it's a full offline solution. So even if you're traveling in a plane or anywhere, you can just take out your iPad and start doing some programming. And I actually like that.
Yeah, and I recommend getting the Learn Python the Hard Way. I got Learn Python 3 the hard way, and it's just it's a lot of different exercises that you just write out by hand, and you learn how to print things, how to get data, learn about variables, and this will be handy for when you really start diving into some of these APIs, because you're going to want to tie those APIs into your script to grab information. Like Postman's a great way to get started, because that's how you explore the API and see what you can get and what's possible. But really, then you need to create your scripts in order to fully utilize the API.
And what I wanted to add as well is it's sometimes hard for us Wi-Fi engineers to find use case and to create a script. And I struggled with that at the beginning, but now what I try to do is I try to just think outside of the box a little bit and not try to think outside of Wi-Fi and everything I do on a daily basis, and try to automate some of these tasks. Right? Sometimes it's not going to make sense, but it's going to help you to learn how to do some programming. For instance,
you think about your workflow and what you could do to automate parts of that workflow, or even do things efficiently, right?
Yeah.
So, has there been any use case that you've used? I know you're still getting into this, but have you found anything on your end that you could automate? Have you automated anything?
The other day I was working on a new design, and I was working on the capacity part of it, and I needed to find out how many associated devices I would have from the overall number of devices. And you usually do that as a percentage of your overall devices, like maybe 60% will be associated, or 50, 70, depending on what you define. And then out of that, you specify the number of active devices. And then if I have no idea which devices will be in my environment, I also have this little client mix that I use. So I would say 50% of my devices will be two spatial streams, AC and so on. So I usually have this Excel table to do the calculation for me. I just input the number of devices, the number of overall devices for my area, and it creates all it gives me the number of associated devices per client type, and I input that into Ekahau afterwards. And I was thinking maybe I can do a script to do that for me. I know it's easy to do with Excel, but just to practice. And so I started to work on a script to do that. And the challenge is that when you start to do percentage and division, is that you're going to end up with float numbers. But you don't want float numbers in your design. You're not designing for the 0.5 device. So you have
because you can't put in I have 15.5 devices.
Yeah. So you have to find a way to go back to integer and still having the same amount of devices. So that's why I try to. I'm still working on it right now, just to practice some math operations with Python. And it also makes you think a little bit on how you can do things.
Yeah, and you just got started this year, right? After WLPC.
Yeah, I just did exactly what you did. So I took the Python book, and then I would just do the exercises. I think I'm up to 26 now, and then whenever I have an idea, I start doing it on my own. And then if I don't remember how to do things, or if I don't remember the syntax, I would go back to those little exercises from the book, and then go from there. And then you can do Google search as well, and then get the information from Google as well. What I want to get into though is like reading files, reading tables and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I would say like the most important thing that you see from Francois is just get started, right? You can download some scripts online and try to figure out how to use it. Grab the book that I mentioned and start reading, and then you'll start to pick it up. So I mean, that's really the best way to do it, is start doing it.
Yeah, and some people can inspire you as well. Like, I know, like Nigel Bowden, he started programming for Wi-Fi, and if you go to his GitHub, he has a few stuff already he's done, and so it can give you some ideas too, and you can troubleshoot for the Wi-Fi side. You can do a lot of scripting on the client device. That can help you to troubleshoot from the client view, right? So I guess you can start from there.
Pulling up his GitHub.
Yeah,
I'm pulling it up. I'm gonna follow him. See, he does have a couple of things like in a script for Ubuntu and doing a Wi-Fi scan, doing a Roam test.
Yeah.
Chromebook Wi-Fi scan. So yeah, I mean,
and
this looks pretty interesting. He even has a PowerShell script. So he's beyond Python. He's doing multiple.
Yeah, I've actually used the script he has for Windows is pretty cool because it allows you to troubleshoot Windows client devices remotely. And I've used it a couple of times with my customers.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just send the script to my customer and tell them install it on the computer that doesn't work properly. And then at the end of the day, they would send me the results, and then you can analyze the Wi-Fi behavior, like when the device roamed, the signal strength, the channel they were connected to, and all of that. So you can do your troubleshooting from having the client side thing remotely.
Okay.
And,
yeah, interesting.
So yeah, and he shares everything, which is pretty cool for us, right? He can inspire us to do the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is the way that we gotta take it, and I think as long as we start seeing more Wi-Fi professionals pick up Python and start sharing what they've used to what they have that they're using to automate some of their workflow, I think that'll really start seeing more of these examples, these use cases on the wireless side versus the wired side. Because I know a lot of it right now is just wired side stuff. What we need, and I think this is where like that net part of the net DevOps comes in, is we need people who have expertise in Wi-Fi to really start scripting and programming things that will be useful.
And also, like as a Wi-Fi engineers, we spend a lot of time doing reports, and I think there's a lot of stuff to automate there too. So the Ekahau report tool is there to help, but I think it's just the beginning for us, because if you think about a Wi-Fi project, if you were to do the report from scratch without using any generating tools, it will take you like 50% of your time, right? To do something, to do like a quality report. And I think we can save a lot of time there and actually focus on the technical piece. Maybe, okay. I don't know if you agree with me, but
well, I mean, I'm kind of open to everything right now because I'm just taking it in and learning. So, I mean, any which direction to help generate more ideas and even improve on other people's work. That's kind of what I'm looking at. But yeah, that's all I had on DevNet. I mean, just getting started with this. I literally just got started 1 to 2 days before recording this. So I'm still new.
That's, never late than, what did I say? Better late than never.
Yeah, exactly.
And it makes it more interesting for us too, right?
Yeah, it does. And then, I mean, I could see us talking a little bit more about this, especially as we actually create things. I'd be interested. I'd be open to sharing what I come up with as far as what kind of use cases I can use on my Meraki network.
Well, you can say, "Hey Alex, hey Alex, I configured the guest SSID on AP number 2."
Yeah, and that's exactly one of the use cases they have.
Hey Alexa, can you prevent Roel from accessing my guest SSID?
And I think they have one that specifically says use Alexa to create a guest SSID.
Can you imagine having something at home, like when your kids come back from school, like, hey Alexa, turn on the homework mode. And then you have like firewall rules that only allows them to do their homework.
Oh, dude, that sounds genius, actually. Awesome. Anyway. Well, if you guys want to check out the links that I mentioned and some of the use cases, I'll put them up in the show notes. Head over to clearsend.net. Francois, do you have anything else to add before we end the show?
No. I think I'm jealous a little bit of your experience at DevNet. But I'm sure, you can do those stuff from home. Like you said, you shared a lot of good resources. So if I have a little bit of time, I'll check them out. I don't have any Meraki dashboard, but I'm sure I can get some stuff, even though I don't have any.
I would say just join a webinar to get some free access points and switches, and there you go. You've got a 3-year license and sign up to be a Meraki developer, and you're good to go.
I guess that's a good idea. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Roel.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so that was this week episode. If you guys please head over to the cleartosend.net website. We'll have the show notes for this episode, and plus you can listen to all the previous episodes we recorded together. And on the left, you actually have the top 5. If you don't know where to start, that's where I would start. And then you can also review us on iTunes and give us your feedbacks. We do read them and take them into account. So yeah, please share your feedbacks with us. All right, and so we'll talk to you next week. Have a nice week working on some awesome Wi-Fi networks, and we'll talk to you next week. See you guys.
Bye guys.